Tem did get the question about the future of his character and the future of Boba Fett. And so here's a couple of quotes we've got here. He says, this show's reception does seem to have impacted the future of the character in the franchise, referring to the Boba Fett series, the Book of Boba Fett, and the impact that it's had due to the reception of Boba Fett in the franchise. He went on to say that, he says, I understand they're going to do a Mando with Grogu movie next, and things have changed too. There was going to be a Mando 4, and I was going to turn up in that. But as of now, I'm still waiting for a phone call, to be quite honest. I think we're just put on the shelf for a little bit. Maybe we come off the shelf later. So that was Tem at Fan Expo Chicago this past weekend. And Jim, he's used this shelf analogy before, the character being put up on the shelf. And I remember when we were covering it once, he was surrounded by Boba Fett Funko Pops, and those Funko Pops were going up on shelves. So it was kind of ironic. But this was the first that I've heard confirmation from anybody that he was going to be in season 4 of Mandalorian.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first we've actually heard about season 4 of Mandalorian. Outside of Jon Favreau saying that, oh, it's written, it's done. Mm-hmm. We haven't really heard much about season 4 of Mandalorian, and we know that that's being now crafted into a film. But this revelation from Tem that he was supposed to be in season 4 indicates to me that they're not strictly going off of season 4 for this film. They've crafted a new story, maybe taking elements of some of the direction season 4 was going in, but largely something being created specifically for a 2+ hour feature film event. And when you think about how many minutes comprise a season of a show compared to a feature film, and I think with Star Wars, they're going to maintain that 2 to 2.5 hour tops running time, then things have to be dropped. And maybe Tem is just being put on the shelf, as he says, to save him for what will eventually be the Avengers style gathering of all the key characters from the Favreau Mandoverse.
That's the Filoni film, rumored to be the Filoni film.
Yes. And for me, as soon as the Mandalorian and Grogu movie was announced at the beginning of the year, all of those other film announcements sort of lost their, they became kind of flimsy to me. The Rey
certainly
film,
not as real. Definitely not as real. The Mangold film.
The Mangold film. However, the Mangold film has incorporated one of Tony Gilroy's top guys from his Andor writing room as the writer of that film. So I think looking at the things James Mangold did, looking at what has been achieved dramatically via the Andor series, I think that there's a lot of potential for that Dawn of the Jedi movie that they were talking about having James Mangold direct. Now, the Rey film, on the other side of the coin, that production seems to be like it's a hot mess. First, Damon Lindelof was writing it for a couple of years, then they canned him, and then they brought in Peaky Blinders writer Stephen
Blinders. Blinders.
Blinders.
Like you have blinders on.
Yeah, that's what I said. Peaky Blinders.
No.
Stephen
Blinders. You keep saying binders.
It is Blinders.
It is
Blinders. Jesus, what a stupid name for a show to begin with. Peaky Blinders. Get the hell out of here with that. I'm not even going to turn that on because it's such a stupid name. Peaky Blinders? Get like I'm going to say to my wife, let's sit down and watch Peaky Blinders. She's going to look at me like I'm an asshole. All right. Let me dial it back a bit. But okay, so they bring him in and he's plowing away on a script. Then it gets stopped because of the writer's strike. Then we hear he's still plowing away on it. But every interview with Daisy Ridley, she still is saying, I haven't read a script yet. Her interviews really help you chart the progress of where this Rey film is going. It was supposed to be in front of cameras this year. They couldn't get it done, so they fast-tracked the Mando and Grogu because the groundwork was already there. The foundation was in place. It was already casted. It was already largely written and conceived. It wasn't a fresh project. And Kathleen Kennedy has a blaster to her head being held by Bob Iger to get a film in the theaters.
Get me Star Wars back on the screen.
If she misses the 2026 release date, I mean, it would have been toast. Maybe not even just for Kathy, but for Lucasfilm in general. It might get completely absorbed by the Disney machine. Do you think that's impossible? You think that can't happen? Well, I got news for you, pal. It costs Disney a fortune to keep Lucasfilm active up in San Francisco. And you know who? They're all housed in that Presidio complex. You know who Disney pays? You know who the landlord is? George Lucas. He's making a fortune still off of Star Wars as a landlord. And he also charges Disney to use Skywalker Ranch for whatever they're producing. He's charging them a fat fee. Don't you think sooner or later that they would say, why are we doing this? Lucasfilm is flailing and has been for a dozen years. Sure, they've had their successes, but that's largely based on the strength of the IP, not the actual content and stories they're crafting. So don't you think Disney might sooner or later abolish Lucasfilm and move the whole operation to Southern California where it could all be under one roof, ILM included?
Well, if they keep getting the returns on $180 million investments like the Acolyte, yeah, I would think that they will.
Yeah,
I'd think that they
will.
will.
While still paying George Lucas rent.